We are live. It is conference championship week in college football. We've got Ohio State versus Indiana for the Big Ten crown. We've got new coaches. We've got coaching vacancies, and we've got plenty of college basketball to get to as well here on the 10. I'm your host, Greg Waddell, joined as always by Doug Kezirian. Troy Machir will chime in throughout the show as well. Before we get into all of the above, I would like to remind you we've got two pretty amazing promotions ongoing for you here at Bet Rivers, beginning with our Bet Rivers Football Squares, where players who place the same game parlay of at least $10 on NFL or NCAA football games will receive an entry into the weekly Squares game. Winning Squares can earn up to a $50 bonus bet per entry. You can see the Bet Rivers app or the website for more details. In addition, we have our weekly Profit Boost pack. Log into your Bet Rivers account each Saturday and receive 2 profit boosts for same game and standard parlays, with the profit boost dependent on the number of legs included. You won't want to miss out on that before college football season comes to an end. All right. In today's episode, we will jump around quite a bit. We'll give you an early look preview at the Indiana-Ohio State game. We've got some Wednesday night college basketball best bets for you as well. But first, let's start with some Big Ten coaching carousel. In the last week, we have seen some new hires. Pat Fitzgerald, former Northwestern head coach, is now at Michigan State. Bob Chesney, the James Madison head coach, is now at UCLA. And Penn State, swing and a miss on Kalani Sitake from BYU. We don't know who the Penn State head coach will be. Let's go one by one through these, Doug, starting with Michigan State. What do you think of the Pat Fitzgerald hire?
I liked it. I loved it initially. I really did because I think he's a great coach, and obviously any sports bettor knows how good he is in the underdog role. That usually means a very good coach. I started to think about it more and more. I mean, his Northwestern teams were extremely limited offensively, and uh, you just don't know how much of that was a lack of money in the budget. Obviously Northwestern's a little better now with the new field and everything like that. You just wonder how much his hands were actually tied or his just offensive limitations. What staff is he going to bring in? Are those the same people that was holding Northwestern back? Not that Northwestern was the same as Ohio State in terms of blue blood program and everything, but I think it's a great fit. I like seeing him back on the sideline. I just want to make sure that the offense is going to be able to hang with some of these other offenses in the Big Ten because this super conference now, Lincoln Riley's catching a lot of heat. Well, you know what? It's a different sort of competition within the conference than he had in Oklahoma. Look at the powerhouses in this conference. So if Sparty wants to get back to the college football playoff, because that's where they were a decade or so ago, things are going to have to change, and they're going to have to bring in sort of a certain mindset and a certain infrastructure. But all in all, he's a good coach. But I think he's going to have to evolve from where we last saw him on the sideline.
Evolution is certainly needed. His last few years in Evanston were ugly, to say the least, and I can certainly understand why people would nitpick this. Excuse me. Look, I'm going to speak as a Michigan State alum. I went to school during the Mark D'Antonio years here. I'm going to speak from the heart on this one. I love this hire. I think there's an inherent thing that makes coaches across all sports at Michigan State University successful, and it is typically when they understand the culture of this athletic department, but when they come in with a chip on their shoulder, underdog mentality, like those have been the guys that have succeeded the most. And Jonathan Smith's a nice guy. I still think he can coach football. I think he had a good run at Oregon State. He was never a cultural fit. He did not understand what was important to Michigan State football fans. He did not understand the rivalry games. It just took him 2 years to even understand what it meant to be the Michigan State head coach. Pat Fitzgerald is a Big Ten guy through and through. He's 14th all time on Big Ten wins. Now, that's because he's coached at Northwestern for forever, but he understands this league. He understands Michigan State's role in it. And I think he understands that you've got to build football teams through the trenches and, kind of win ugly to start and then go from there. I would say this, I'm talking myself into this hire more and more as the days go on. I think there's a very clear alignment between when things started to go south for him at Northwestern and when the NIL era began. Now, good luck to any coach winning at Northwestern in the NIL era. I get it. They went 6-6 this year, but that's just not a program that's ever going to pump money through their football program. Michigan State will. They just announced a $1 billion athletics fund yesterday in tandem with Pat Fitzgerald being the hire. I'm in on this. Culturally, I think it's a perfect fit. We'll see where it goes. But at bare minimum, Michigan State fans can know they've got a guy who's won a lot of games in the Big Ten that will understand Michigan State's place in this, and who, by the way, has a very personal chip on his shoulder coming off of how this went down at Northwestern to prove that he's a great football coach in this league. Let's talk the UCLA Bob Chesney hire as well. I got to be honest, I don't know a ton about Chesney other than obviously he's coming from James Madison. So should Bruins fans be excited here, Doug?
I think so. I think they're sort of realistic with who they were going to land. Not too long ago, they had Chip Kelly, who's a big name, and that sort of flamed out. So you want the right sort of fit. I thought Deshaun Foster would have been a decent fit there, just having played there and things along those lines. And obviously, last year they played well down the stretch, but just not the right start this year. They needed a makeover. I hope they retain Jerry Neuheisel. I haven't heard much, but I would imagine Chesney also wants to bring over his guys. Zignetti came from James Madison, so you kind of like the trend there. I think Chesney's the right fit. I mean, I just talked about the super conference component to the Big Ten. UCLA is punching up, so to speak, right? Like they kind of know where they are. This is a far cry from the days of Troy Aikman and Terry Donahue and whatnot. So, but Chesney could be the guy that sort of gets him back if he's a sort of a phenom in one of those situations, which the Dukes could produce because they certainly have the track record, at least in recent years. I don't know his like ties to the region and everything else like that. It's going to be a really tough sort of road to hoe in this conference just because it's so potent. I mean, we talked about it all season, just the middle of this conference, like Illinois, like Minnesota, like Nebraska. Those are programs that don't want to be in the middle, so to speak, but that's how competitive this conference is. It's produced each of the last two national champions. It has the number one ranked team now. So I think all things considered, it should be a good fit for the Bruins just from a quality of coaching standpoint. The question is, can they get the right recruits and sort of convert it all to wins with such a tough sort of atmosphere within the conference?
Yeah, it's a tough spot. It's an uphill battle for UCLA, certainly now that they have joined the Big Ten here. From what I have seen from Chesney, there's not much to dislike. I mean, a career 71% winning percentage across a bunch of different levels. I think, he probably isn't going to get the credit he deserves for what he's done at James Madison. Stepping into the vacancy left behind by Signetti is not as easy as it sounds. It's not like there were a bunch of Signetti recruits that hung around at James Madison. Those guys went with him to Indiana. And for him to go 9-4 in year one, he spit out a team again in year one with a top 30 offense and defense nationally, and then improved from year one to year two, going 11-1 this year. Chesney has my full attention, even if I'm someone who hasn't paid close attention to him. From the outside looking in, it's not hard to see that he has something to him as a head coach. Last but certainly not least, the Penn State vacancy here. We thought it might be Sataki. Penn State put a full court press, a huge offer in front of him. BYU, the founder of Crumble Cookie, stepped in to make sure that he would not leave Provo. It's a huge win for BYU fans, and it leaves Penn State fans wondering what is next for this program. Do you have any sort of insight into what you think is coming next?
I mean, weren't they the first program to fire their coach, right? So usually you get ahead of it. Now they are a game of musical chairs, standing here waiting for a seat to open up in terms of if they're looking for a vacant coach. I'm a little worried here. Um, I think Franklin has sort of run its course. I mean, anytime you have a good coach, sometimes you just need a new voice, things like that. Now that's typically in the NFL because there's just not turnover of players. Like Andy Reid needed to kind of leave Philly and then get a new sort of voice in there. Every once in a while, there's just a coach has been somewhere for too long. But with Penn State, I mean, you have players that turn over, and so maybe Frank, I don't know. So it's just kind of weird where they were. Even the Sataki sort of fit wasn't right. He's a good coach and quality. I just don't know if he would have been the right fit for the region. I don't know what they're going to do next. I don't know if it's an OC that they're going to have to pry away from one of these teams in the playoff and that they have sort of some conversations going on behind the scenes. But I'd be a little worried because remember, this is a program that sets the bar high. They were sick of sort of losing the big games. They have all this money coming in, whether it's boosters, athletic budget sponsors, whatever it was is Adidas or whatnot. So I just wonder, um, they could take a few steps back maybe before going forward here after the Franklin era.
Yeah, it certainly feels like it's trending that direction. I mean, it's the wild, wild west right now. You've got rumors that there are important people within Penn State football circles unhappy with what they did to Franklin now, who are kind of stepping in and getting in the way of some of these things. I think, I think Kalani Sitake's a great football coach. Do not get me wrong. He's done a great job in Provo. But at a very broad level, to make the decision so abruptly after the success Franklin has had in recent years, after a run last year, and to cut ties for Kalani Sitake is just like a strange thing to say out loud for me. I don't know how I would feel about that as a Penn State football fan. He's not a top 10 coach on earth. He's not the biggest, sexiest, flashiest name. Like, I think you hoped for more if you were going to make such an abrupt move on Franklin. And obviously that was if Sataki had even worked out. Now we're talking, okay, it didn't work out. Let's move to backup plans. This can't be what anyone involved with Penn State football envisioned. I'm just going to sit back with some popcorn and enjoy watching this play out. I think there could be plenty more twists and turns before we get a new head coach named, but usually that's a sign of incompetence within the athletic department, quite frankly, when you've had so much time and there isn't a clear answer. Let's get Troy in here to
What do
chime
you think
in.
Mike Tomlin name being thrown out?
I mean, I don't hate it. As crazy as that is, I do not hate that compared to some of the other options on the
I
board
know,
right
right?
now. Let's get Troy in here. Troy, what do you make of the Penn State situation at large?
Well, I understand why they weren't able to get a head coach maybe during the latter stages of the season because they're wearing their option with the interim head coach, and you certainly don't want to lose the players in the program because they were vouching for them as they picked up a win late in the season and got their legs back underneath them. But the fact that by Sunday morning, 3 SEC teams had fired and hired head coaches. And, with the exception of LSU, Penn State is a bigger brand than all of them. Their program is one that they want to be, one of the 5 biggest programs in the country, bigger than an Auburn type. So the fact that, and maybe this wasn't the world's greatest kind of coaching carousel class, but I find it shocking that we're sitting here midweek and there's still nothing. Like there's not a great list of candidates. They're probably going to have to go potentially a former NFL coach but like to your point about, a high end OC from, top tier school, like that doesn't fit Penn State. They get name brand guys. And I do generally think that going and getting like a Chip Kelly type or a former NFL head coach for college, it's just oil and water sometimes, just because they're 2 completely different types of organizations. So I'm a little bit gobsmacked that they're still without a head coach. There's no one out there that seemingly is, right for the job. And the person they probably want to have, Matt Rule, didn't have a great season. Certainly his quarterback got injured, and they signed him to a new contract. So it's just very, very surprising. But this could send Penn State hurtling to the middle of the pack. And not to mention, well, James Franklin is now 6 hours south, but recruiting in the same exact market, and he's recruiting right now. And Penn State, what are they doing? Are they hitting the transfer portal? Are they recruiting? I think this could the next week could be very detrimental to the Penn State program.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch it play out. I guess pour one out for Penn State fans, man. They've had a lot they've had to go through in the last decade, to say the least. All right, there is a big game on the schedule this week. That would be Indiana and Ohio State. Both of these teams seamlessly into the college football playoff, regardless of what happens this weekend. But there is a trophy on the line. This game opens at Ohio State -4.5. If you wanted to back Curt Cignetti's Hoosiers outright, you could get them at +175 at Bet Rivers. Our total at 48. I am very excited to hear what Doug Kezirian thinks of this game.
Is it possible to have a flat spot in a conference championship game?
Ooh.
Because I wonder how much the Buckeyes are really sort of amped for this game, just given the last 12 plus months, right? Just given that they lost for the fourth straight time a year ago to their rival and then exercised some demons in the playoffs and won the title. And they're actually fans. And now I'm not part of the region. I didn't go to either school, but there were fans that actually thought they would have rather beaten Michigan last year than win it all. And then this year, you just felt they were really let out a collective sigh of relief having won that game. And then you compare the emotion there and coming into this one and what Indiana sort of like Zignetti wants and how up for this game they're going to be. It's crazy to think, but I just feel like the Hoosiers are going to want this game distinctly more. And I think they've been just circled this game, just want it so badly because Zignetti is sort of they're going to feed off him and his intensity. So from that standpoint, I think there's like, so how does it manifest itself? Do I like Indiana first quarter? Do I like it first? One of those situations. I really think the Hoosiers are the right side early on in the game. Now, can the Buckeyes flip the switch like they did last week? And I thought it was really interesting that Ohio State's game plan. Now, it's really important to look at some of this. People, we all look at it as casual fans, how a game plays out and blah, blah, blah. A lot of times the play calling sets up plays later in the game. So, for example, Iowa during the Brian Ferentz offense coordinator era. And then before that was just stretch handoff left, stretch handoff right. What they were doing is they were fine punting because they were setting up play action deep passes. Iowa was the king of being down and coming back in the second half because you're setting up the defense. Last week, what they were doing to the Michigan defense, they weren't just running right up the middle like last year. They weren't going to try to answer the critics for the trenches. They were throwing to the sidelines and throwing deep early to soften those trenches. And then eventually they were getting the running attack going. So I wonder, now that was obviously Michigan specific, that game plan. So I don't know what the Ohio State game plan is going to be early, but I do think the tenacity in the trenches, I think will favor IU. I think they're live here to win the game because I think they're really good. I think the defense is underrated because Zignetti and the offense and some of the scores they've put up. That defense really was so key in that game against Oregon. I think they're going to be ready for this. I do think Ohio State's got the better roster. I probably would want to take first quarter, first half, just because of this. There's so much talent with the Buckeyes' whiteout position and everything else. I kind of want to isolate what I think will be an edge and tenacity for the Hoosiers early. So sort of a first quarter, first half angle here. But like you, Greg, I am so fired up to sit back and watch this one.
Yeah, it's just a gift for Big Ten football fans for certain, maybe college football fans in general, that these two teams get to play for the #1 overall seed in the college football playoff bracket and a championship along the way. Look, I have massive respect for both these programs. Curt Cignetti is everything he promised he would be. I mean, this is a man who walked in and said, "Google me," and he was right. We all better have Googled him. We clowned him for that. It's just the most impressive coaching turnaround that I can recall in my 32 years on this planet. He's the real deal. He's got a better team than he had a year ago when they fell short in games like this. He's got what he needs on the lines. He's got the playmakers on the outside. He's got a running game he can rely on. There's no reason you should believe Indiana can't win this game, except for the simple fact that I think this is the first time in Ryan Day's career that at this point in a season, at the end of a regular season, his team finally feels a little bit free. And that scares me. And I don't know what we're going to see because that second half was just a breath of fresh air for the entire Ohio State program. And in my heart of hearts, I do believe this Ohio State team is the most talented team in the country. I do believe Indiana's close, but if you listen to Curt Cignetti this week, he'll tell you we're not there yet. We're not recruiting like them yet. And this would be a big game for us to get so that we can get there. This Ohio State defense is just so elite. I like your angle here of looking for Indiana spot wise early in the game. Can they maybe jump on them in the first quarter? Can they, I don't know, just throw a couple punches? I will say, in the last week, from watching both these teams more closely than I have all season long, knowing they're going to meet in this game, is it crazy to say I'm a little more confident in Ohio State's quarterback than Indiana's in a game like this? After seeing how he responded to that first interception against Michigan, I mean, he was flawless on the road in a hostile environment in bad weather. And part of that was the Michigan defense getting diced up and Jeremiah Smith just creating separation. But I mean, he didn't miss a beat for the final three quarters of that game. I watched Mendoza even in a lot of Indiana's comfortable wins this year. I mean, he's on the bench by the fourth quarter. He's very rarely had to run this show for an entire football game. I think back to that moment against Oregon where he kept the Ducks in it with a boneheaded play. Against Purdue, he was missing throws in a rivalry game for the first quarter. And look, they still hung 56 points on their rival, but he was on the bench for most of them, and it was mostly the ground game. I don't think the Indiana ground game is going to work against the Ohio State game the way it has this season. I think they're going to need Mendoza to make throws, and I'm just not all the way there in confidence in Mendoza's arm the way I want to be coming off of what I saw last week. So right now, I'm staying away from this at 4.5. If I was leaning anywhere for the full game, I think I would lean to the Buckeyes, but I do like isolating Indiana early, maybe a first half play, maybe a first quarter play as part of the approach here. Let's get Troy in. Troy, can you give us any notes on how this is being bet early in the week?
Yeah, I can, but I want to start with something that Doug alluded to, and it really bothers me about this week, particularly now that we're have a 12-team playoff, and it's that these championship games don't matter. And yes, for data points, they don't, but for the 50 to 80 players on the team, they're not guaranteed a national championship. Now, certainly, the Ohio State, a lot of their players have rings from last year, but you're not guaranteed a national championship, and this is still a conference championship that you will be a winner of for the rest of your life. So the kind of the notion that these teams can take their foot off the gas for one game, like that the players don't want this. It always really bothers me as a college athlete. Like I've never taken a game off. There's certainly games I didn't perform well at, but I really hate this idea that, and it's, a lot from the media, people talking about data points and seating and positioning, but that they should it's almost armchair quarterback. Oh, well, it doesn't matter that much. You can be hurt by this game more, so they should just punt on it. You kind of have to keep the momentum rolling. And right now, Ohio State has all the momentum in the world because they just got the monkey off their back and beating Michigan. So, but I do think, because I've bought into this as much, because it's talked about so much, that I am concerned about whether or not Ohio State, a team that has taken I think like the fewest snaps of any team in the country this year by design to get them ready for extra games of the playoff. Doug's words have now concerned me about Ohio State as, a very strong favorite because the public is backing them as they are. 92% of the money is on Ohio State to win outright. 74% of the money is on Ohio State to cover. Now, the really interesting aspect for me is 73% of the money is on the under. And that would be the angle that I approach here. 8 of Ohio State's 12 games this season have gone on the under. 2 of Indiana's last 3 games have gone on the under. And we've talked about Indiana slow starting a lot of games this year. We've talked about Ohio State's defense being very good. I can see a scenario where Ohio State is maybe slow on offense out of the gate. I could see a scenario in which Indiana is once again slow out of the gate because of Ohio State's defense. So not just the under is something I'm interested in, but first half under as well. Now, a couple trends for the spread, which lends itself towards Ohio State. Ohio State has covered the spread in 10 of its last 12 games. It's tied for the best in the country. Ohio State has covered the spread in each of its last 9 games against ranked teams. And Ohio State has covered the spread in each of its last 4 games as a favorite of 2 touchdowns or less. And that's important because they've been favorites of, well over 2 touchdowns this season. So the public is on Ohio State to win and cover. And the money is right now strongly on the under. I think Ohio State is the better team. They should win. You can't completely count out Kurt Cignetti. And I think what Mendoza did at the end of the Wisconsin game. Now, granted, Wisconsin is not Ohio State, but they do have the moxie, the toughness, the pluck, the grit. yada yada. I do think Ohio State is the most complete team in the country, but I hope that both teams approach this as a true championship game and everyone goes full bore, because oh my gosh, this game is going to be so much fun. Like these are the two best teams in the country, in my opinion. And the fact that we get to see it after a kind of a lackadaisical Big Ten season, there've been a couple good games on paper, but this one, like, like for the NCAA tournament in college basketball, like, was it 2 years ago when Gonzaga played Purdue in the final? The whole tournament, I was just begging, please make sure these two teams meet in the final. That's all I want. I don't care about the upsets. I don't care about the buzzer beaters. And because of the super conferences, all I want this year is to see Ohio State play Indiana, and we're about to see it.
Yep. Yes, the moment we've all been waiting for. And crazy to think a year ago, I remember doing a show with you guys around this week, wondering if Ryan Day would be fired. And here we are a year later. It's crazy. All right. We will close the show with some final thoughts on Ohio State, Indiana. But for now, let's pivot to some championship odds. There are 3 Big Ten teams that we believe will be in the college football playoff with a chance to win a national championship. Ohio State is the favorite, plus 150 to win a national championship. The Indiana Hoosiers are second on the list, plus 475. And then you can get the Oregon Ducks at 11-1. That is the 5th best odds to win the national championship. Doug, would you fire on any of these right now?
So I think Ohio State and Indiana are going to get a bye regardless of how this game goes, unless, I hate saying it and putting it out there in the universe, unless there's a key injury or something like that. I do think there's a bye here because teams aren't going to be punished, and like you can't really like push Oregon past. Oregon's 5. You can't push them past Indiana because they lost at home to the Hoosiers. So if you kind of look at 3 games to win, home, all that stuff. I think the value's on Oregon. They're going to have a pretty favorable matchup at Autzen, and then they will get Texas Tech, who I think is really good. I'm assuming they're going to. Obviously, a lot can change. And then the Buckeyes, but I think the number's big enough for Oregon for me. If I were to take anything, that's where I would dip my toes in, because I think the path opens up for them. And I think they learned a lot from last year. I think that's really important. Last year, they were the favorite, or they were the seeding favorite against Ohio State. And I think they were a little overconfident. And then the Buckeyes were just on a roll and kind of hit their stride late in the year. I think Dan Lanning will have them ready. I think it'll be an interesting game if they end up meeting each other. But I think that kind of long shot payout's the only thing that has my attention. But I will say this: UConn, when they went that run in the NCAA tournament, back-to-back years to win the title and covering all those games, Buckeyes are not getting mentioned enough by the public, the headlines, the buzz. Just what this team is doing against the spread, who they are as a blue blood, the number 1 ranked team, and there's not enough like, well, it's Ohio State automatic pass like UConn got during their runs. So I'm kind of surprised the Buckeyes aren't getting sort of the buzz, from this ATS run.
Yeah, depending on what happens in this Big Ten championship, this might be the last time we look up and see Ohio State with plus 150 next to them. I mean, there is a world here where if they take care of business and Kurt Signetti, big game Signetti's, looks like it did last year, right? Like where we look up and all of a sudden the futures market changes here. It's been a remarkable run. I'm with you. I wouldn't touch the Bucks or the Hoosiers. I want to sit back and see how this week plays out first. I do think Oregon 11-1 is an appetizing number. If you are someone who believes the Oregon Ducks can make a run and win 4 straight potentially and win a national championship, that's not something I'm currently actively trying to talk myself into, but they're in that pool of teams that I think could do it, and 11-1 is a good number if you buy into it. All right, let's do college basketball quickly. 3 games on Wednesday night. We'll do some quick thoughts back and forth, Doug, starting with Indiana on the road at the Barn against Nico Medved's Minnesota Golden Gophers. It is his first conference game in the Big Ten. Totals 145, Hoosiers by nearly 10. Do you like anything here?
I lean to the favorite here. I just don't think Minnesota's going to be able to shoot and hang with the Hoosiers in this game. I do like the barn atmosphere and everything like that. I just wanted like 11 and a half or 12 and a half. I feel like the Hoosiers can kind of step on it and pull away. Maybe I'm influenced by Iowa having to go to Breslin Center and what happened there. Road chalk shouldn't concern me that much. I don't know. I just feel like this time of year, I'm okay laying the road chalk more so than in like January and February. Maybe that's just muscle memory and how these, this is kind of a newer start or earlier start to the conference play. I think IU can kind of handle this, but I am excited for the Medvid sort of run here with the Gophers.
I lean to the Hoosiers here as well. Minnesota's on a 3-game slide right now, and they just got the news that Chancey Willis, their starting point guard, is out for the season. That's just a horrible injury that's hanging over this team that was already pretty light in the guard spots. So for me, Indiana's a very shot-making dependent team. They've got to see threes go in to be real potent. That's always a volatile thing, especially on the road, but they've been shooting it really well to start the season. This is a team that's in the top 50 in three-point percentage, in the top 60 in three-point volume. I think they've got two of the best scorers on the perimeter in the country in Lamar Wilkerson and Tucker DeVries. No reason to think that this Indiana team won't travel well this season. One schedule note, they do play Louisville this weekend, and that is the first opponent on Indiana's schedule that is currently inside the top 70 on KenPom. So it is a little bit of a look ahead spot. We've seen teams go to the barn before and get bit, but there's just not enough to like with the Gophers right now for me to talk myself into taking the home dog. Next on the list here is Northwestern on the road at the Kohl Center against the Badgers. Wisconsin by 9.5 at home. Big total here at 156. You like anything?
Uh, I guess the answer is no. I don't know. I would lean to the dog here, unless I really think there's a clear path with this kind of a number, like I do the Illinois game. Sorry, the Indiana game with the shooting and everything, the disparity of the percentages. I think I just have to grab the points here. Wisconsin, the Kohl Center is not the same as it once was, where you just could not win there and everything. Not that I think the Purple Cats will win or need to win to cover this line, but the intimidation factor is not quite what it once was. But is Northwestern the right team to handle this? And I wouldn't be surprised however this plays out. But when I'm sort of when I'm torn there, I think I got to lean dog just in these types of situations.
Yeah, I think Northwestern's one of those teams that we're still figuring out exactly what they are. We know one thing undeniably. They've got a superstar and a veteran who's done it before in this league, and Nick Martinelli, who has been unstoppable this season. They're trying to work in a lot of youth with him. But, when you have a Martinelli, I do think you can believe in a team to go on the road and at least stay competitive with a team that is still figuring things out. For me, that is what Wisconsin is right now. And their two big tests this year, they've been non-competitive, blown out against BYU, lost by 28, and then lost by double digits to TCU as well. I just don't think we've seen Wisconsin hold up well against a quality opponent. KenPom has this game just a 6-point Wisconsin win. I think there's some value on the dog here. I'll be on Northwestern plus 9.5. And then last but not least, out west, UCLA on the road at Washington. The Bruins favored by 1.5. 142.5 is the total. Washington's been without Hans Steinbach, who for me is their entire team, offensively, defensively, everything. He's so important to what they want to do. I haven't heard an update on his status, but without that clarity, it's hard for me to talk myself into much with the Huskies right now. There's still some questions with the Bruins too. What do you see, Doug?
I mean, you mentioned that last part, the questions with the Bruins and how shorthanded they were against Cal and lost outright in that game. I mean, Cal played great, like really great, especially in the second half. They just hit big shots and didn't crumble when the Bruins closed the gap. I think UCLA's got enough here to go on the road and handle their business. I'm a big fan of Mick Cronin. And I think, there's different ways to look at it. When teams are, we mentioned Minnesota 4-4, and like, I actually like that the UCLA squad has kind of been through some battles and lost. Like, I think they're going to be more ready for this, as opposed to like Sparty was battle tested and still undefeated yesterday. I think UCLA is the right side here. I just feel like they've worked out some kinks, even if they're shorthanded, and can go to Washington and take care of this. This is not a long trip back to the Midwest or even like Rutgers or something in conference play. I think this is going to be an okay trip for them midweek. I kind of like UCLA here.
Yeah, I think that's the side I would lean to as well. The more I look into this, they need a good Donovan Dent performance, certainly, who was a disaster against Colorado, but or excuse me, against California. Sorry, I'm mixing up the two most recent losses from these two teams. It's been ugly for both Washington and UCLA through Feast Week. I did look it up just quickly, trying to figure out Steinbach's availability. He returned to practice yesterday. It sounds like they're trying to get him back for this game, but nothing formal on this. That scares me. I want no part of this Washington team that has major spacing concerns, even without Steinbach in the lineup. UCLA is the 17th best defense in the sport right now. They've had a week to sit and listen to Mick Cronin yell at them. I expect some type of response from the Bruins. So let's lean the Bruins. That's for me. My only official play tonight, Northwestern plus 9.5. Okay, we can close the show with maybe a best bet or final thoughts on Ohio State versus Indiana. Are you going to lock anything in the midweek, Doug?
I think first quarter plus 1.5 at Bet Rivers minus a buck 37. I think there's some line value here in that regard for the reasons I mentioned earlier. But I wouldn't be surprised if Indiana sort of takes care of business and the Buckeyes are, I don't know if flat's the right word, but just don't have it. And I use it, they're a good team, right? They're a really good team. And I was impressed with them. I think the game could play out like maybe in the Iowa game where the Hoosiers are right to the end, make a play here and there, low scoring. But I think first quarter play plus the 1.5. I think that's the right side. I think that's where you're now. Obviously, the game line's over field goal. And we always like that, but I think we're isolating what I think will be a much more fired up team early on and be more pronounced in favor of IU.
I like that angle for sure. I'm going to let all things Big Ten football championship marinate for a couple days. I have no
Okay.
bet in the Indiana Ohio State game for now. I am going to lock in Northwestern plus 9.5, though, as my college basketball best bet of the day. We will have another show this week on Friday. We will be back with another episode of the 10 here on the Bet River Sports Network to give you our finalized cards for Ohio State versus Indiana and everything else for the Big Ten slate this weekend. Thank you to Troy. Thank you to Doug. Thank you to our entire team behind the scenes. Reminder, take advantage of those promotions. We've got our college football squares and our weekly profit boost pack as well. You don't want to miss it. We'll see you again on Friday.